and then you pull that into your new project, and you insert your transformer, you insert your switchboard, and then you use the ElectroBIM change link to take the graphics on the single line and link them to what is happening in your model. So that way you can have a really nicely put together starting single line diagram, and then you can use change link to get it connected to what you are creating in Revit. That is really fascinating to me that you guys are doing it that way. That's brilliant. I really like that. So very cool. Good afternoon and welcome to Design Master Training. My name is David Robison. For our customer project, we're going to be looking at a project sent to us by Pennell Consulting out in Spokane, Washington. It is Hyatt Place in Post Falls, Idaho is the name of the project. And we'll go ahead and take a look at this project using ElectroBIM. Rob, I saw that you are with us. If you want to come off mute and give us a little intro into the project we're looking at, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you for presenting our project. Appreciate it. And if somebody has comments on it, it's in permitting now. So if somebody sees an issue, please let us know. The project, like David said, is over in Post Falls, Idaho. We had previously done another project a couple of years ago for Marriott down in Lewiston, Idaho. And that project previously, we were really starting to get into ElectroBIM, mainly because of the ability to control our panels and switchboards and feeder loads and how they're going to represent. This project is roughly 117,000 square feet. We decided to go 480 volt on this. It does have a generator for life safety and other equipment backup. So we've got a 700, 701 transfer switch and a 702 transfer switch. And it is a standard hotel project. Other than that, it's nothing special. We did modify the one line graphics significantly, mainly because I've been doing this 30 plus years, and I grew up with the one-line diagrams being presented from left to right and not from top to bottom or bottom to top. Con in our office is on the line, and he has done all the graphics and changes for the one-line diagram, as well as customizing ElectroBIM for our uses. So, Con, David, you want to go to the one-line diagram?
Yeah, we can jump to the one-line diagram. We can start there. I was going to definitely pull that out. You guys have done a lot of work there. Whenever I get a project from a customer, I never know where things are. So I always use the panel edit, and I use highlight panel and have it take me to the one-line diagram. That way I don't have to find it.
Right.
But here is the one-line diagram that they put together. And as Rob was saying, it's got some extensive customization on the graphics here. It's a really good example, I think, of what you can do with our single line tool, that out of the box, we have graphics, but you don't have to use those. And with a little bit of work, you can get it looking how your company likes to present a single line. Yeah. So if you guys want to talk more about the customization you did, go ahead.
So before Con gets into the customization, like I said, we typically show one-line diagrams from left to right. When we started using Design Master for AutoCAD, we went through and did that, customization as well. For us, the one-line diagram in AutoCAD Design Master did not work out as well. So we did a lot of line graphics, line work, and then used some of the features of Design Master for feeders and fault currents and stuff like that. Because we have issues with Revit and existing projects, we want to make everything look the same versus just completely transferring over to BIM, where we do on existing projects, we do a combination of both CAD and Revit. So everything has to look the same. So we just continue that philosophy with the one-line diagrams to make everything look the same, whether it's in CAD or BIM. So that's why it looks like this. So Con, if you can go ahead and start talking about it.
Yes, for sure. All right. One of the elements that we did before we start any job is I created a template file for a one-line diagram. The template file would have a transformer, a switchboard connected with a meter on it, and then it'll have a typical panel connected to the switchboard. And then, of course, before we did that, I went on and customized the transformer symbol and made a family to represent ours. And then the switchboard, we made it instead of top, that there was a side connected portion, kind of adjusted the line work to that it can stretch anyway. And also very similar with the panel, instead of top connected, we made a side connected. Of course, if you go on and start plugging devices in from scratch, it would take quite a bit longer. But if you start from a template that has the transformer, the switchboard, and an interlink between the panel and the switchboard, then what you can start using is the copy link command. And then the next panel, you just copy link, and it plugs in automatically exactly the graphic that you used on top, and using the same type of line work. And that saves tremendous amount of time. Yes, that copy link command right there. And you just copy in as much panels as you want, and then you start plugging in the transformers in between and other panels, and copy linking that, and out the one line grows.
Question for you on that template that you are describing.
Yes.
So you have a template Revit project, and you have in the model the transformer and the switchboard inserted just kind of off in space connected to the single line. Is that correct?
Actually, we typically don't have the switchboard or anything connected. The template is actually not connected to anything. It used to be connected, but because when I got rid of all the devices, it's actually not connected to anything. So when I come back, I change the link and I find the switchboard that I plug in. Do you see that change link command? And I find the new transfer that we plug in, and basically I relink the switchboard and the panel and everything. It's not too much. It's basically the switchboard, the panel, and the transformer, and then from there I just plug in all the new ones.
And that's very cool. So I want to summarize what you just described to make sure everyone else understood what he was describing, because that is a very cool way to do this. So when you create anything with Revit, Revit always wants you to insert your panels, and you got to put it on the 3D model. And then you've got this single line, and they're, the same, but they're not the same. And so there's always this question: how do you actually start a project? How do you have your first, as you're getting started, when you want a template, what do you do to make that easy? And so what Conda's describing is they've taken a drafting view and they've put together a single line. Presumably at one point there was stuff behind it in the Revit model, but they've gotten rid of that. So it's unlinked ElectroBIM entities. So they've got this stuff inserted, and then you pull that into your new project, and you insert your transformer, you insert your switchboard, and then you use the ElectroBIM change link to take the graphics on the single line and link them to what is happening in your model. So that way you can have a really nicely put together starting single line diagram, and then you can use change link to get it connected to what you are creating in Revit. That is really fascinating to me that you guys are doing it that way. That's brilliant. I really like that. So very cool.
And if some projects are very similar, you can just bring in that view from the other project, and you don't have to edit much, and just change link to the new panels, and out you go.
All right. So there is a good tip for you. One that I'm going to put in my little tips and trick notebook to share with other customers as they are trying to do their single line diagrams. So yeah, and you guys were talking about, you definitely did a lot of customization on the graphics. Out of the box, we have graphics, they will work, but you don't have to use them. It's just a matter of how much time you want to spend customizing your graphics. And they've spent a fair amount of time. So like this switchboard here, if I select it, you can see It's their switchboard graphic. It's no longer ours. So they've renamed it. And I'm just going to run edit family and take a look at it, see what it looks like. So I'm guessing you probably took ours and were modifying it. Is that what you did?
Yes, correct. I took yours, I modified those, and now you can pull it up and down and all that. The ins and outs are the same things that you have, correct?
Yeah. So when you're creating your graphics, a lot of times it's going to be easiest to take what we provide and modify it, just because there are all of these connection points, and they're fairly well put together. So they're a good base to work off of if you can get something that's similar. So that was the switchboard. Then they've also got just a panel. Now, this is a pretty simple thing. It's just a box, and they're going to have their connections coming in from the left, and any feeders going out are going to go off to the right. And also they did take their transformers and they modified these as well. That's similar to our transformers, but not exactly. So just some drafting changes there. So part of the trick with getting your single lines looking right is just being comfortable with Revit doing the drafting, because this drafting, I grew up on AutoCAD. It's never as simple for me to do my drafting in Revit. But as long as you can make it look right in Revit, it's really easy to then plug it into ElectroBIM. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight yourselves about what you did on the single line? There's a couple other things I'm going to call out, but anything else you wanted to talk about?
On the bottom, if you notice the generator and the GCC, LCC, all those are kind of custom blocks as well. In the beginning, had a little difficulty interconnecting those, but then found a way. The generator has 2 connections, and the GCC, LCC as well, and also the cam lock connection and things like. But that's part of the block itself. But that's about it. Everything else is kind of standard what you guys typically have.
So is this linked to something in the model?
Oh, it is. Yes, there's
Okay. Yep. So there's
yeah.
a device there. Okay. So there's a corresponding.
Right,
so
by
that
the
is actually
generator.
linked to it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that
we
is,
try and link everything as much as possible to something in the model, so we can get our fault currents down and our voltage drops down. Even the ECBs to the right of the generator and the GCC, those are linked in the model, located in the electrical room. It's just basically redoing in Revit what you've already done in CAD, Design Master. So that's basically our philosophy. Others might have a different philosophy. So
yeah. And you want to have it linked to stuff in the Revit model, which is good. But a lot of the stuff that you are doing on the single line, you're drafting stuff in here that's not being represented on the model. So like we have, if we run the highlight device again, we select this GCC, it's this box here in the Revit
which
model.
is essentially a panel
Yep.
to some degree. But so the graphic itself is different based upon the type of device it is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, I call this, I refer to this as the guts of it. I don't know what the technical term is, but all the stuff inside the box describing what's going on with that GCC. It's all important stuff on the single line that doesn't show up in the Revit model. So it's just a matter of getting the right graphic in there.
Yes.
So
yes,
a lot of that stuff is just doing the right drafting here. People ask us, well, how would I draw a GCC? And it's like, well, you just draw it how you want it, and you just know that that's what that is. And it's not going to be backed by anything in Revit, because Revit doesn't care about all these other little pieces. You can see also that they have all of these, what did Revit call them? Reference planes. They've built out a nice grid of reference planes to just line everything up to help with the drafting, which is a nice technique just to help with organizing everything to make it look nice. So that's a nice thing you can pull away from here as well. They've got their feeder schedule. It's pulling in information. You will notice up here, they have a feeder schedule that's got a question mark and then another question mark here. What that's pulling out is that over here, there's actually a couple panels that are not linked to anything, which is why they have all of these question marks. And then that shows up on the feeder schedule because we see that as another feeder. So when you run calculate, it'll highlight these and say, hey, these aren't connected. What do you want to do with them? And you can at that point either delete them or link them later.
Yeah, so we have to manually go through and modify those as we need to. Sometimes they keep coming back. Sometimes they don't.
So if you see those question marks, that is what's going on. If we ran a calculate, it would highlight these and say, hey, these are not connected. What do you want to do? And what we do is we put the little question marks on there so you know that it's not actually connected to something. We also try and leave a little bit of the original data so you have some idea of what it used to be before we threw the question marks on. There's other stuff going on here because we don't have just a single line. Obviously, with ElectroBIM, there's a lot more going on. I'm going to pull up the panel edit. And this is always the command we run first when anyone sends us a project, just to get a sense of what the project looks like. You can see here they do have that generator and the utility, so you can very easily see those two different sections in the tree. It's a pretty good list of panels. So this is a good sized project. So this kind of shows you what you can do with our software. You can, obviously, there's a lot going on in this single line. We have these 3 sections here. This is never necessarily wrong, but you just want to be aware when you have these pieces that are not connected to anything. You just want to have a little bit of an idea in your mind what these actually are and why they are existing. If we run highlight panel, in this case, you'll see that they're the kind of the separate pieces of the switchboard. So they've modeled it as multiple separate pieces in Revit to get all of the pieces in there for the 3D modeling, but they're not actually electrically connected. It's just handled with the one MSB in the model. So if we pull up the panel edit, so this is where all the electrical stuff is happening. And then this is just some graphics to show the different sections of that panel.
I would note that if sometimes we have those sections as different ampacities from a breaker, and if we do that, and this is more CAD wise, we haven't gotten into this portion of the Revit yet, but let's say we have a 2000 amp switchboard and we want to make a section only 800 amps for whatever reason, then we'll have that connected, and those sections will be connected to, electrically connected through ElectroBIM to the main switchboard. But in this project, we didn't have that.
Yeah, so that's just you got to figure out how you want to model it, how much time you want to spend, if it's important or not. Well, like I said, we always look at this and just be aware that that's what those are. It's not wrong to have those things up there, but they are a little bit, there's something being modeled a little bit differently than normal, and that's totally fine. But just be aware that when that stuff's there, that you have a reason for it to be living up there and not connected to something. There's also the generator, and there are the ATSs in this project, and they've got their ATSs wired up properly so that they are connected to the 2 feeders. You'll see that in our software, we call out the 2 feeders. So ATS 02 shows up here in the tree, and then it should show up somewhere else. Here it is as well. So we show you where it's connected on feeder 1 and feeder 2. And you'll see that feeder 1, we then got a bunch of stuff connected to that ATS. Up here on feeder 2, we actually stop it at feeder 2. That way we just don't duplicate the entire thing multiple times. So we'll show everything under feeder 1. So that's all being shown here. And then we show you where it's connected on feeder 2, but don't show you everything downstream of it. And for the sizing of those feeders, if you have an ATS and there are 2 connections, we've got the standard feeder connection, and then there's the feeder 2 connection. So if you need to size those 2 feeders differently, you can do that with our standard interface. There's also the swap feeders button. So if it ever gets confused and it has feeder 1 and feeder 2 flipped from how you are thinking about them, if you run swap feeders, it'll just flip those 2. So if you wanted feeder 1 to be the one connected to the generator, run swap feeder and it'll adjust it. Be aware, ATSs are a little bit tricky to model. They're so tricky, in fact, that Autodesk's out-of-the-box ATS is not modeled properly. It only has 1 connection. So if you are trying to do an ATS and you're using the standard one, it's not going to work for you. We have a knowledge base article, and we'll link that in the show notes for anyone watching the recording. So you have that available. It will show you how to create that ATS.
Yeah,
for anyone watching,
I think Con took a lot of time to try and get that thing modeled correctly.
Yeah, the ATSs, they're a nightmare. If we go to our knowledge base and we search for transfer switch, so this will explain to you how to create it and how to get it set up, and then how to actually do the connection. The powering, getting them powered properly is a little tricky as well. So just be aware. We've got resources on this. This is not really ElectroBIM related. This is just pure Revit stuff, but enough people ask this question that we put the pieces together to explain it.
Yeah, going to the schedules, though, one of the things we are struggling with, we like to show schedules for transformers, and we have yet to be able to come up with a decent way of showing a schedule for a transformer. And we typically use this block that you've got right now, ATS-01. That's a standard block for switchgear, transfer switches, and we would like to use it for transformers, but for us, it's just we have yet to be able to come up with a decent schedule for the transformer, so that we sit there, even though we've got the panel downstream that we can refer to. We'd like to show the schedule for the transformer, make sure that the transformer size is correct versus in relation to the load that's coming on the transformer. For us, it's just, or for me, it's just a good check to make sure that we're not oversized on the transformer or undersized on the transformer, or really close on the transformer, but we have not been able to correctly model in a schedule.
And the reason behind that is, as soon as you change the family block within the families from switchboard to transformer, when you do that, it gives you the ability to connect two types of voltages to the transformer. But as soon as you change it to a transformer, now you can't create a transformer schedule. I mean, you can't create a schedule. And so you have a choice. You can create a transformer as a switchboard and create a schedule, but then you won't be able to have a secondary voltage connected to it. So that's kind of what we're running into.
I'll make a note of that as yet another problem in Revit that we need to help you guys solve.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
They certainly have given us lots of work to do.
Yeah.
So keeps us busy.
Another thought on the one line regarding the feeder callouts or tags. What about a thought of just creating a tag that would tag that line, and then you can customize that tag in any way, like a oval or a whatever, instead of it plugging in like that. I don't know if it's going to draw it by itself. It could be better, but sometimes it becomes a little clunky. I'm not sure if you thought about that.
So that by default, feeder IDs are turned on, and we're going to include these in the feeders. If you wanted to have those off the feeder, you could turn that off in the options, and that'll get rid of all these, but then you are responsible for putting them on for everything. But if you select this graphic, you will see that we have a parameter. Let's see if I can find it. That is going to correspond to that feeder ID. So we have the tag as a shared parameter in Revit. So if you wanted to do an annotation referencing that, however you wanted, you could do that and then pull them off and then just label them yourself. So that is an option if you wanted to do it that way.
Yeah, because we kind of do that in CAD. In CAD, like I said, we're doing more line work than intelligence work. And so we just start attaching feeder IDs from Design Master. We know that we can't copy them, but just for every single panel or device or distribution piece of equipment, we just put in a feeder ID to correspond with that piece of equipment.
And Dave, would if I would get rid of that, would the feeder schedule also bring in the oval shape?
If you got rid of that, the feeder schedule isn't going to work anymore. The feeder schedule does depend on the feeder IDs existing.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
If you wanted to do that, the way you actually would do it, a way you could do it, you'd lose the ovals, but you can actually put together a schedule of electrical circuits. And what you can do is we want that feeder ID and then the wire call out. So you can do a schedule of IDs and call outs. And I think we can probably group them. I can't remember how you do that. But anyway, if we do this, I'll just click OK. It'll be close enough.
No, it'll be a schedule of those. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, so you have this schedule. So this would be the way you could create it as a standard Revit schedule. And then you have it.
And then sort them.
Sort them and group them by this ID so that you don't have all the duplicates.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way you can have this schedule.
I like it. Okay.
It's under sorting.
Yeah, because we've kind of put together a schedule from our standard schedules. You see it under the properties.
And then if you uncheck the itemize every instance.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so if you just want to schedule that that looks more like a Revit schedule, you can do that. And this will be everything on your project. So this gets all your branch circuits as well, not just your feeders.
Yeah.
So just be aware that there's gonna be a little bit more, a little extra in here.
No, that's good to know.
Looking at the customization under wire ampacities, it looks like this is just standard out of the box wire sizing. So we have all of our customization options. And as you saw on the single line diagrams, Pendle did a lot of customization there to get it looking right. For the wire sizing, they have used it out of the box, and that works fine. The out of the box standards work. We've got plenty of customers who are using them. So you can use the out of the box wire sizing, not touch it, and it's going to be just fine in terms of getting projects out the door.
Yeah, just so you know, we have started customizing the wire ampacities just to give us a little bit better control over it. So
Yeah.
we have started doing that.
There's a comment here on the transformer sizing question in the chat. I'm going to read it. Mike suggests that you create a schedule of circuits sorted by panel name, showing the rating, connected load, and basically use a schedule to do the back checking rather than a panel schedule for each transformer. Create a schedule in Revit, which would be the other way to handle that. Yeah. Yeah. So go here, create a new schedule based on either circuits would be one way, or you can also do something on electrical equipment, depending on how you want to do it, and put together a schedule for the back checking that way.
Okay.
One thing Revit does do well is that these schedules, it actually does schedules really, really well. I always am impressed with what they do with the schedules. And so if you are comfortable with the schedules, there's a lot of power in what you can pull out from your model. I'm going to pull up the fault schedule. Are you guys using this to calculate fault in your project?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So they've got the fault. You go to the panel edit. You do need to set your starting fault. So let's take a look at what they did for that. So with the utility, it's calculated. So if it's not specified, we assume an infinite bus, and then we work from there. So if you don't have a fault value from the utility, it'll just calculate it. So it looks like that's what they're doing. And then on the generator, they do have the fault value of the generator. Typically, you're going to want something because the generator does not have an infinite fault. So get that from the cut sheet, and then they put that in here. When we do the fault calcs, we'll do it on both branches down to that ATS, and then ATS 01 and 02 here, we'll take the larger of the two and then carry that forward. So I'm assuming that's going to be the utility side. So this is about 2000 amps here. Scroll down. And actually we show it. So we show 21,000 and then 1800. And then we obviously carry that 21,000 down. So that's what fault looks like on an ATS. And same thing on the voltage drop. We'll calculate the voltage drop to the ATS from the generator and the utility side. And then at the ATS itself, we'll show you both of those and then carry the larger of the two forward. And there's one other thing I did want to highlight. If we go to their panels, I'm going to take one of these ones up here. You'll notice that when we select a panel, it has this bus size fixed because these values are actually being pulled from the family. And so if you want a different size bus, you choose a different type. This is a recent addition, by the way, for anyone who's been using the software for a little while. We actually have the types listed here. Now you don't have to go into Revit and change it. You can do it directly from the panel edit. So if we wanted to change this from a 225 to a 200, you could do it. Yeah. We added that. So that's actually new in the latest release. So you can do it directly here. And they've got all these bus sizes connected to the actual bus parameter. So if we go highlight this panel, here's the family in Revit. Select that family. We will run edit family to look at it here. And then we will use the ElectroBIM family edit command. All right, so you can see that it's been changed here from, by default, if you don't do anything, it's a other branch circuit. So they specified that this is a panel, and then they set the bus size for all of the different types, of which there's a fair number. So each one of those bus types got a new bus size. Obviously, this is a little bit of work to do. So I don't know if Con got to do this or someone else in the office, but you do it once.
Con did.
Yeah, well, I'm giving Con PTSD as he looks at this.
Yeah.
But you make all these changes once, and then you have them for projects going forward. And then when you set the type, that's going to set probably the size in Revit, the actual physical enclosure dimensions, but then the actual bus size as well for ElectroBIM for its sizing purposes. Rob and Con, thank you for sharing it with us. This was a super fun and interesting to look at. Do you guys have any final comments you want to share with it? Is there anything else that we missed that we should highlight?
Con, you got anything?
Oh, good to go. Thanks.
Con did most of the work.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing with us, guys. If anyone does have any
Welcome.
questions for Rob or Con, feel free to throw them in the chat. We can come back to this if there are questions. If anyone else has a project they'd like us to discuss, I'm looking for people to volunteer. So if you have a project and you're willing to share it, I would love to get that. Feel free to send me an email, david@designmaster.biz or support@designmaster.biz. Let me know that you've got a project. Rob responded last month and shared this project with us, so I appreciate him doing that. If anyone else has a project, we'd love to take it and show it. It doesn't have to be this big. It doesn't have to be this extensive. There's value in looking at small projects and simple projects as much as looking at the large and complex ones as well. So anything you have done using ElectroBIM, love to highlight it on a future training and just talk about what you're doing. So just want to throw that out there if anyone else is willing to share a project.